phones, either upstairs at Dean of Students. I think recently we tried sending them here. You guys were busy at the time. So whatever system you have in place to deal with that when it happens, but you're never going to be able to just put a pause on incoming people. There's always going to be, you got to service those questions. A lot of people don't pay attention to all the procedures before the test date comes, and they got those last minute questions like, where am I supposed to park, or and you gotta help them. So it's good to have, I don't know if you rotate answering the phones, but somebody's got to be on there serving that person and getting them in the door, or one day the doors won't open anymore. So.
Do you have an example of when something had kind of gone awry?
For us, the craziest was just this past week when we were doing the advanced credit testing for chemistry test outs. And we joke that we're down in the basement and everybody forgets about us. We were a part of Dean of Students, and we always forwarded stuff up there, and they cover for us and take care of us. But they're not our family anymore. We got divorced. So we're still trying to get a feel for each other here, and we tried forwarding to Winnie, and I understand she was, I was picturing her pulling her hair out from some of my conversations. She had to take care of priority one, and she didn't even know all that we do to even answer the questions if we forwarded our phones. So for us, it was kind of a last minute panic because we had to walk out the door to go administer a test, and so we were told it would just go to voicemail and be forwarded back to us. Our customers could have waited, and then we would return their emails in between the tests. So in between each test session, we were jumping online and responding to people and taking care of them. So that was pretty crazy for us because when the tests are in-house, you have all your staff and you can work with the door open and the phone ringing, but when we had to actually leave and close the office, that's where it's frustrating for us because then when you come back, there's a big mess waiting for you. So, but then we just, you just go through it. Like some people are like, I don't know where to start. It doesn't matter where really. You just pick a place and you start chipping through it and it gets dealt with. So that's what we have to do every time we leave the office. Come back to a little pile to deal with. You know how it is if you leave for vacation. The worst thing is coming back because then you got to-dos out the window, right?
How do you prioritize those to-dos?
Well, obviously the first thing is test dates that are set. I mean, those are number one. We have other things we have to fit in. With experience, you get to feel for when you're going to have your volume of tests. A lot of our vendors, they have windows like 2 to 4 times a year where they're allowed to take that particular test for certification. It's not open all year round. Some of ours are, but so we know during those volume times we're not going to get anything done. That's all we're going to be doing. So during those downtimes, like this summer was great. We got to do a lot of the things that needed to get done, that never get done, that kind of stuff. So one is just knowing, and this was just my first year too, so I was just leaning on Cindy because she's been there 11 years. She was telling us, trust me, you gotta get this done now because next week you aren't gonna breathe. Part of that's just the experience of the people around you who've already been here. And then the philosophy I've also always carried is mistakes are gonna happen. We're human. When they happen, I'm transparent. I'm gonna fess up to it and I'm gonna try to learn from it and improve the system. What can I do so this doesn't happen again? And it's part of the learning curve. So I'm not somebody that, like with my wife and I are kind of opposites. That's how it happens, right? Opposites attract. And so like she's more the type of person to get upset when something goes wrong. And then when she does something wrong, she goes, I know you wouldn't have got upset with me. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen. I mean, why get upset about it? It's just move on next, There'll be something else tomorrow that's gonna happen. So I'm a more logical, laid-back person, so.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. What different approaches do you use in talking with different people, and how do you know you're getting your point across?
Well, part of that is just getting feedback, because you can think you said it perfectly, especially nowadays. You don't know if you had their attention because they're thinking about the last text they received or whatever. You never know, but you want to try to get them to communicate back to you to show that they understood. And it's the feedback loop. We had that in one of our classes, right, Alex?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Good communication is not just barking out orders and waiting to see things happen. It's a ongoing process, and then you got to have respect in your communication too, or else there's going to be shutdowns going on that you're not going to know about if you can't be open with people and respectful with people. When you talk about talking to different groups of people or whatever, I try to talk to everybody the same. I try to be transparent and always empathize for the other person's needs. I'm the type of person that would usually put their needs in front of mine. That's just the way I've usually been. To make sure they heard, again, I would just so now, how did you see any problem with that, or what do you think was the most important thing there, or just some way to get them to communicate back? Getting that first regurgitation back is the hardest. Once they start talking, then it's easy to communicate about it. But if you just say it at first, and people want to say, yeah, I got it, yeah, no, I got it, but you don't. They may not.
Exactly.
So you may have to make yourself feel or look stupid for a second to actually verify that they understood it, but to embrace the conversation a little further or deeper. Of course, when you're emailing with people, that helps because it's in writing and you can go back and forth a little easier sometimes. But when you're communicating face-to-face, at least you have body language, facial expressions, and it's a little easier. So.
Why are you planning on leaving your current position?
I can't stand those people. No. I've heard so many good things about y'all.
Wait a minute.
No, again, here's the transparency factor. So we were making 6 figures in insurance. All of the economy in 2008 kind of turned around. Gas prices went up. Our agents started quitting. People quit buying insurance. So I came back to college to get that stamp of a degree and try to get a, more, what would you call it, instead of a full-time commission person, an actual career, right? So I did a real check, right? And so I came back and being a full-time student, I didn't want to do it part-time because I knew it would take like 20 years. So I was like, we just got to jump all in. So we were living in Purdue Village. If anybody knows how that is, it's really dinky and small and lame, but it's cheap and affordable. And I was working for $7 an hour, 20 hours a week as a part-time student job, and being a full-time student with some financial aid. So we got to learn to live on nothing, next to nothing. And got through those 5 long years of next to nothing. But when I got this job, it was the first job I got offered out of my 1 year of grad school I did when I realized I couldn't do that anymore. I don't know if I already said that. I did 1 year and I was like, oh, no more, I need sleep, I need to have a job. So once I got out of that, was my first job I got. I was like, okay, I'll do this for a year and then I'll start looking around. And it was just, Cindy was great. The industry was just an eye-opener as far as how much it had in common with kind of what I was looking at, because after working with the police force as a student worker and security guy, it was like, I want to be a police officer now, and the two things that I feel like cross over from that is the integrity of tests and the rules that you've got to communicate. It's not like I try not to use the word enforce. It's more of a fair table of rules for everybody, and then of course accommodations for those that need that. And then it's customer service. Those are my 2 favorite things. Most the good stereotypes of a police officer, they're very personable and always looking to protect and serve the people, and that's kind of the person I was. So those are the 2 things I really enjoyed about that. And after I was there for a little bit, I started seeing that, oh, okay, you could be in this industry for 2 or 3 years and then you could move up somewhere else. But where I was at, I was tunnel vision. It's like Cindy's been there 11 years. There's nowhere to go. It's me and my good buddy coworker here. There's nowhere to go, so I'm just gonna have to look to go to some other campus or something. So I had no idea something like this would happen. Raquel, it was one of the interviewers of me when I interviewed for that job, and so I thought, okay, she's gonna be there forever. Cindy's gonna be here forever, so I'm gonna have to leave Purdue. So fortunately, Raquel got something to tempt her away.
So at the DRC, you deal with a lot of different kinds of students who have different disabilities. Especially in the testing center, students are coming in, normally exams are really, really stressful for people, but for people with disabilities, holy cow, it's stressful. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of sensitive students who, I guess, describe a situation where you've dealt with some sort of situation like that, where you're dealing with someone to try to keep them calm. And
all right, here you go. Engineer just traveled an hour with his buddy. He was from Illinois, and he studied I don't know how long for this 6-hour engineering exam. I don't know if you've heard this one, Karen. And You get them seated, and usually their hands don't come up until they're ready for break, which is 2.5 hours or 3 hours later. His hand goes up immediately. And I go in there, and I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I think I'm taking the wrong test.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, what? Okay, let me see. And I like looked at his test, and I was like, is your friend that came with you taking the same test? And he said, yes. So I went and looked over his friend's shoulder, and I was like, no, your friend's is different. I was like, all right, come on out of the room for a second. Let's find out what's going on. And so we called the company, and it's what he signed up for. He had a receipt for 2 months. He chose the wrong test
Oh.
and paid this money and drove 2 hours, has to wait for his buddy before he can even leave. So I called the company and tried to go at bat for him and see if I could say, hey, you know, he didn't even get past the instructions. He didn't see any questions or nothing. One of our other vendors, this happened once, like a couple months earlier, and they gave us a credit voucher. Said, okay, cancel that test, sign them online, register for this test, here's a voucher covered. We'll just transfer his money. This company wouldn't do it. They said, hey, he's known for 2 months that he was taking this test. And I was shocked. I've never seen anything like this. I was trying to tell this guy on the phone, I was like, it's not like he test drove your car and wrecked it. This is a digital test. He opened it. You can see on the recording, he was in the instructions. And he refused to budge. But because I did it in front of the person, he saw, I didn't try to make him feel bad. I never turned on the kid and said, dude, did you read? Were you drunk when you applied? So I didn't do that. He got to see me go to bat for him, and he was really upset that he was going to have to call his parents because that's who paid for the first test. Guess what? You know, and I gave him all the information of the number to follow up and contact the test and try to work with him through his parents, or I didn't know if they'd get attorneys involved or whatever. But he held his hand out, shook my hand, and thanked me for going to bat for him. And that's just the way I tried to do things in life. I never did hear back if he got anything worked out. I kind of, it chokes me up because I want to find out, you know, what if anything happened of it. But this funny thing too is I was still 4 or 6 months on the job, so I still felt kind of new. And I was like, Cindy, can I bring him into your office to do it or whatever? And I figured she'd want to, you know, be in on it or kind of supersede anything I say. She walked out. She like shut the door. I was like, okay, I got this. So I just try to ease their concern and let them know anything I can do to help them. And some people are going to be stressed, so there's nothing I can do but just serve them the best I can and get them started. And usually once you get them started, then they're focused on the task at hand. So.
I'm going to follow up. What if the person that you had spoken with got agitated and angry? How would you have handled that?
Right across and take them down. No, when I was no, really. Well, when I was young, I got to hear a friend of mine tell me how they were working at McDonald's and somebody got agitated in their face and she threw the hamburger at the dude's face and got fired. And I was like, now, why would you do that? So, I mean, even before I really was in the workforce much, I could think in these terms like, you want a paycheck, you got to follow the rules. That customer's your customer. I mean, we all know the customer's always right. So what do you think that was going to accomplish? So basically, all you can do, like in our rules, we try to make sure they're away from the actual. First of all, we get them out of their seat and out of the testing center, so they're not disturbing other people. Get them out into the lounge or whatever you want to call it. And then if it's even still getting loud, we can try to take them into the office or in the hall. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to show understanding. You know, we did all this in our classes. I'm going to try to show understanding and empathetic facial expressions and like, man, you're right. You know, I'm going to let them know I'm on their side. We got to see what we can do to fix this. And then all I can do is turn around and try to explain to them in the easiest layman terms I could, like, all right, well, I don't necessarily agree with their decision, but it's their test. If you and I owned a company and, you know, 200 times a year this happens, you know, how long are we going to put up with it? Eventually somebody might say, we can't keep doing this. We don't know if people are trying to record questions or, you know, I just told them, I said, personally, if it was me and probably 90% of the other people in the world, they would have given you a credit. But apparently this company doesn't have a credit voucher system set up. Their competitors do. Hopefully if this happens enough, they'll be out of business and somebody else will do these exams. But for the time being, I just talk to them like that. And if they're still yelling, I'll just be like, I understand, I'd be mad too. I think your parents would probably be yelling more than you. So I don't get offended by their agitation or their loudness. I just try to empathize, and usually if you show that you're on their side, it helps.
Okay.
What's her name?
Hmm?
What's her name?
Cindy